Karolyn Gazella is the publisher of the Natural Medicine Journal, and she's been writing and publishing integrative health information since 1992. If you want to know what should be top of mind for natural healthcare practitioners this month, stay tuned. The Natural Medicine Journal is a leading electronic journal for integrative healthcare practitioners, and it's peer-reviewed. Now, Karolyn Gazella is the publisher and the author of hundreds of articles and books on the topic of integrative health. We like to check in with Karolyn pretty regularly to get her sense on what we should be paying attention to in the world of natural medicine. So welcome back to Nutramedica, Karolyn. How are you today?
Thank you, Brian. I'm doing well. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear it. Now, we've all been fighting this terrible COVID for a year, but there seems to be, a renewed sense of optimism now. We're seeing the numbers go down, especially in the United States. Have you been feeling this down in New Mexico, where you are?
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, we're quite proud here in New Mexico because at this point, as of today, 61% of New Mexicans have had their first dose and 50% are fully vaccinated. So we're doing really well down here and we are feeling hopeful and just trying to get back to what normal is going to look like.
Yes. Well, you guys are to be congratulated because that clearly is an immense accomplishment. Okay, let's dive into your top stories this month. What should we be paying attention to, Karolyn?
Well, interestingly, I'm going to choose a peer-reviewed paper that was in our April issue. Okay. It was on flotation therapy.
Okay.
Now, flotation therapy is kind of a fancy way to say a warm Epsom salt bath. But the reason we really liked this paper was because it's becoming more popular as a tool among integrative practitioners. So this happened to be a literature review. So okay. The authors looked at the literature and here's what they came up with. Based on the preliminary research, Epsom salt baths or flotation therapy is good for reducing muscle pain, sleep disorders, and mental health like depression, anxiety, stress. So it's just one more tool that can be used. And you know what? It's fairly safe as well. So we like that, effective and safe.
Well, I'm waiting for them to remake that Altered States movie. Do you remember that one? That's from a while ago, but that was all about the flotation tanks. And I will say that on the street where I live, there is a flotation clinic. So I know that they're popping up everywhere. It's becoming very popular.
Yes, it has. It has. I think that there's only just a couple of cautions. People who have kidney disease, seizure disorder, or open wounds should avoid flotation therapy. But other than that, it can be helpful. I know after a long, stressful day, a hot Epsom salt bath, man, I turn on some classical music and I can tell that it helps.
I always wondered what was actually in Epsom salts. What is Epsom salts?
It's a magnesium. It's a form of magnesium, yeah. And it's, the skin is the largest organ of the body, so it gets absorbed. So there's some direct effects and then there's indirect effects, especially when it comes to the stress management and alleviating anxiety.
Well, I think we could all use a bit of anxiety relief these days. Okay, let's move on. What's your second top story? I think it's about functional foods, is it?
It is. And this was a sponsored podcast, but I love this topic. And one of the reasons I love this topic is it's becoming huge in the natural health industry. Just as an example, by 2022, global sales of functional foods will be $440 billion. Now, let's put that into perspective. The dietary supplement industry is pretty big and it's growing. The dietary supplement industry worldwide is not even half that much. So this is huge. This is a big topic. It's an important topic because what functional foods do is they take a food item, but then they add specific targeted nutrients that are going to enhance health and help reduce risk of illness. So those foods are kind of spiked with good things. And there's a lot of benefit clinically. So I think that clinicians need to put this on their radar as well.
So is that sort of like the modern version of adding vitamins to some bad old cereal? I mean, what is it really? Is it marketing or is it an actual thing?
You're bringing up a really good buyer beware, because the reality is you want to make sure that the functional food is clean. So it doesn't have preservatives and bad stuff. You also want to make sure that the functional food is not high in sugar, because that's going to defeat the purpose. So to answer your question, no, you're not just spiking something bad to make it a little bit better. You're actually taking something good and making it better. And, when you think about that, taking dietary supplements, there can be pill fatigue. Some people, like the elderly, can have difficulty swallowing. Right. So kids, for example, if you can give a child a yummy gummy instead of a pill, they're going to like it. So I think from a compliance standpoint, this just provides another alternative to dietary supplements to get those targeted nutrients into the body, into our patients.
That's a great story. And what was that figure again? 500 billion?
440 billion.
Wow.
Big industry, and it's growing.
Well, and recently on Nutramedica, we have had a couple of conversations about the toxic environment we live in and the implications that has, not just for fertility, but also for children's health. So tell me about your third story, endocrine disruptors and ADHD, because that is something close to my heart.
Yeah, it is to mine as well, Brian. I have to tell you, endocrine disruption is dangerous. This study happened to look at increased risk of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in children, which is, reaching astronomical numbers. It's something to be very concerned about. But the reality is the research clearly paints a picture, as you mentioned, with male and female fertility, but also some cancers, cardiovascular disease, even obesity can be linked to endocrine disruption. This particular study found that phthalates were the biggest problem, and phthalates are plasticizers. So they've become almost ubiquitous. If you think about plastic, you're talking about plastic toys, plastic in flooring. You're also thinking about phthalates in body care products. And so I think that the take home with this particular study and the other research is we need to do the best we can to reduce our risk of exposure to a variety of chemicals. Think about bisphenol A and triclosan and parabens. I personally have used natural health products for skin since the 90s. So this has been on my radar for a very, very long time. Yeah. It can be overwhelming to patients sometimes.
One of the resources that we've highlighted in the past on Nutramedica is a website called skindeep.com that we all look at religiously at Nutramedica to make sure that the personal grooming and skincare products that we use are actually safe. And that's a great resource. Do you know Skin Deep?
I do. As a matter of fact, that's a part of the environmental working group. I like the fact that the EWG does, I think it's called Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen. So they look at foods that are clean and foods that are dirty, that should be avoided and should be purchased in the organic form whenever possible. Wonderful organization, a lot of great resources.
Yeah. Something else that strikes me is I always, so much of our food becomes, wrapped in plastic these days. They shrink wrap it, in plastic. If you're buying, say, lamb from New Zealand, which we see a lot of in Canada anyway, it's always shrink wrapped in plastic. And I just get the heebie-jeebies looking at it.
Yeah, it's true. The food packaging industry is definitely a source of phthalates. We know that to be true. I mean, one thing that people can do is, I'm a firm believer in my local farmers market.
Absolutely.
Buy fresh whenever possible. Avoid packaged foods whenever you can. The key is to try to reduce risk. Even if you reduce your exposure, even a little bit helps. But then the other thing that practitioners also talk about is kind of shoring up your detoxification system. There are tons of ways that integrative practitioners use to help patients rid their body of these toxins. And I think that that's something to focus on as well, to make it less overwhelming for the patient.
Yeah, absolutely great advice. So I see that number 4 today, you're talking about ginger. And, ginger is one of my favorite spices. I suppose it's a spice. Great to help with an upset tummy. That's what I use it for.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why we liked this study so much, because when we think of ginger, we're thinking of, morning sickness or chemotherapy-induced nausea,
Right.
and that upset tummy that you're talking about. But this study looked at blood glucose control. So it's just another great application for this wonderful spice. And it also, ginger is highly anti-inflammatory. So it's a great herb to use in clinical practice. And that's why we wanted to showcase it in the Natural Medicine Journal. It can be hard for people to get enough ginger out of their diet. I personally like to cook with ginger, but I also, I'm a juicer. I do vegetable juice, and I'll take an inch or so of fresh ginger and I'll throw it into my juicer.
Right.
And that's a great way. But there are also tons of dietary supplements that have ginger as an ingredient, or even a sole, isolated herb. So
well, as I think about it, if I think about ginger, I'm thinking, you can buy the root at your local store. And I think the word is you want to try and find a root that looks like a human body. Have you ever heard that?
I have not.
You're supposed to infuse it with even more power, because it is a funny looking root. So you can actually get the root and you shave it off, add it to your food or juice it. You can also get the pickled ginger, which you often see served with sushi, as you probably know. And what I've noticed there is that there used to be a lot of pink pickled ginger around. And now when I go to my local sushi restaurant, it's all sort of a natural, they seem to have taken the pink out of it.
Right.
And then something that my old dad loves, and always has since he was a kid, are ginger candies. Which, is really a candy, but it has that nice ginger heat. So if you like that, that might be something for you to do.
Absolutely. And I am a fan of sushi as well. So when we get together, let's enjoy.
With an extra helping of ginger. Love it.
Right.
Okay, what's your fifth story today?
Okay, the fifth story is I'm going to do an interview on Monday with Dr. Heather Zwicky. So we've been covering COVID extensively, especially through the podcast series. Dr. Heather Zwicky is on our editorial board. She's an immunologist. She's wonderful. So here's what happened, Brian. I got a call from a friend who's seeing a functional medicine doctor, and this friend said, my doctor said I shouldn't get the vaccine, and she wants me to try ivermectin as to reduce my risk of getting COVID. Ivermectin is a very powerful anti-parasitic medication.
Wow.
It's presently being used to treat mild COVID symptoms. And I said to my friend, wow, I am not aware of any research. So I jumped into action. I did some research, and I called up Dr. Zwicky. And it's totally inappropriate. And I tell you, this is one of the reasons why we like to do our COVID Insight series, is because this, we're going to get the word out that ivermectin should not be used prophylactically. The FDA says it should not be, but also the research is, it's tiny. There's like 3 studies that were published, about 1,000 people, if that. It didn't compare ivermectin compared to vaccine. And we know the vaccines are, 90+% effective. And it also didn't look at, and they're using ivermectin chronically. So it's not just one dose. Right. They're using it. So the gut disruption that occurs, ivermectin, the reason it kills parasites is because it's like a bomb going off into your gut, right?
Wow.
So why would you want to do that? It's so counterintuitive. When you think about it, 70% of your immune system resides in your gut.
Right.
So why would you want to do something so disruptive? I'm very, very concerned. Obviously, I explained everything to my friend. Dr. Zwicky had just heard about this, and she's like, you're absolutely right, Karolyn. We need to get on the horn and we need to get this word out. So that's one of the cool things about the podcast, the Natural Medicine Journal podcast. And the other thing, Brian, it's available everywhere. Our podcast, wherever you hear a podcast, just search for Natural Medicine Journal and you'll be able to listen to it. It's all over, Spotify, Pandora. We're even on Amazon Music. We're on Audible. So yeah, you can find us anywhere.
It's a great podcast. I love it myself. Well, that I have to say that there's so much heat and energy, and not all of it positive, around COVID and around vaccines. And I think it's great that you've jumped on this and done the research and can report back to say that we should not be using this drug off label for COVID anyway, right?
Exactly. And here's another thing, Brian. Just this morning, I was reading JAMA. There's a randomized clinical trial showing that ivermectin does not reduce mild symptoms in COVID patients compared to placebo. So now even the treatment, even using it as a treatment, is coming under question. So yeah, I think that not a good idea.
Right. Well, let's move on. What have you got planned for your next edition?
I'd also like to talk about the special issue that we have coming out.
Yeah, that's what I meant, the special issue.
Yeah. We do a couple special issues a year. So this May, at the end of this month, it's going to be on the immune system. And very timely, obviously, immune system is top of mind in all of our readers. So this special issue has a variety. We try to cover our special issues with a variety of topics and a variety of perspectives. I even have a paper that I wrote, I co-authored with Dr. Dana Cohen. So I am not a doctor. So when I write for the Natural Medicine Journal, I always find a co-author to work with. Right. Dr. Dana Cohen was my co-author this time, and it was on hydrogen water.
Okay.
And hydrogen water will stimulate the immune system and reduce inflammation. And I was skeptical. After reviewing the research, guess what, Brian? I'm drinking hydrogen water.
Well, I tell you what, how about you and the good doctor come on Nutramedica and tell us about your findings and highlight the paper? We would love to have you to talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a pretty interesting topic. And there's some caveats with hydrogen water. But also in the immune special issue, where we talk, Dr. Zawicki is being interviewed on hydrotherapy. We talk about viral immunity with Dr. Russell Jaffe. We talk about fecal microbiota transplant. We happen to have an expert on FMT on our board, and it's a topic that we've been following closely. We also talk about probiotics. So you can see that our special issues are pretty diverse, but we want to just expose our readers to some of the things that are going on in the scientific literature associated with that specialty, and this is the immune system issue.
Well, I certainly hope that you will come on with the doctor and talk about hydrogen water and any of the other subjects that you're covering in the journal, the special edition that you have coming up. It's always a pleasure to see you, Karolyn. Thanks so much for sharing your news, and continue with the great work. And I'll be listening to you on that podcast.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, the Natural Medicine Journal is a leading electronic journal and a website for integrative healthcare practitioners and anyone interested in the field of natural medicine. It is peer-reviewed and focuses on scientifically valid and clinically relevant stories, just as you've heard today. So check it out for yourself at thenaturalmedicinejournal.com. So to stay up to date with our newest programs, don't forget, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. And if you enjoyed the program, please let us know by liking the video. We always appreciate your feedback. And why not leave a comment? We'd love to hear from you. On behalf of the entire Nutramedica team, thanks for watching today. We'll see you next time.